If you have ever stood on a platform without really looking at it, counted ceiling tiles instead of people, let your body move before your mind was awake enough to object, you already understand the first truth about mass transit. Most danger does not arrive suddenly. It arrives on schedule. Every day, mass transit systems move people by the millions. In Tokyo, New York, Chicago, Baltimore, and cities like them, trains and buses run with near mechanical precision. Doors open, doors close, lights flicker, announcements repeat, and the crowd flows exactly as expected. A system designed to move human bodies efficiently through shared space. According to transit authority data across major metropolitan systems, more than 34 million passenger trips occur every weekday on public transportation in the United States alone. Globally, that number climbs into the hundreds of millions. Most of those trips end safely. Almost all of them feel forgettable. That is the point. Mass transit depends on routine. The same stops, the same routes, the same cars filling and emptying again and again. Studies of commuter behavior show that the majority of riders choose the same position, the same seat, or the same section of a vehicle every day, building comfort not through awareness, but through repetition. Familiarity replaces vigilance. We learn which doors open closest to the stairs, which cars feel quieter, which strangers feel safe simply because they are always there. And over time, the system teaches us something dangerous. Do not look too closely. Do not intervene. Do not disrupt the flow. Transit authorities measure success in minutes, in movement, on-time arrivals, dwell times, headways between vehicles. When something goes wrong, the priority is rarely fear. It is delayed mitigation. If no violence is reported, the system continues. If no emergency is declared, the train does not stop. Across major United States transit systems, incidents that do not involve immediate physical harm are often logged as non-emergency disturbances, resolved only if escalated by the passenger themselves. The average response time for non-emergency transit calls can stretch across multiple stops, sometimes across entire routes. The system does not panic, it waits. And while it waits, millions of people continue moving through shared space with strangers whose names they will never know. This anonymity is not a flaw, it is a feature. Mass transit is designed to let you disappear into a crowd without being noticed, to pass through each other's lives without friction. Most riders never speak to another passenger. Many never even make eye contact. Studies consistently show that commuters report feeling safer near familiar strangers, people they recognize but do not know, faces that become part of the background of daily life. Familiar does not mean safe. It just means repeated. The danger is not that mass transit is unsafe. The danger is that it feels safe enough to stop paying attention. A man who boards at the same stop every morning. A driver who follows policy instead of instinct. A car that does not slow. A platform where no one turns around. When something goes wrong on mass transit, it rarely looks dramatic at first. There is no alarm, no announcement, no immediate rupture in the routine. There is only a moment when you realize the system is still working perfectly, and it is not working for you. Tonight, these are not stories about monsters, conspiracies, or impossible odds. These are stories about ordinary people riding ordinary routes, inside systems designed to move forward no matter what happens inside them. Because when millions of people pass through the same space every day, the most unsettling question is not, how could something go wrong? It is this: how many times has it already happened without anyone stopping the train? 5 rides, 5 routines, 5 moments where the system continued. So, stand behind the line, hold the pole, watch the doors, and remember, the scariest thing about mass transit is not where it takes you. It is what it carries with you, quietly, every single day. Story 1. The car I always stood in. I used to think my commute was the safest part of my day. That sounds naive now, but repetition has a way of convincing you that predictability equals control. Every weekday morning, I woke at the same time, tied my hair the same way, and left my apartment at 7:18 a.m. I walked the same 4 blocks to the station, passed the same vending machine with the flickering display, and descended the same concrete stairs that always smelled faintly of disinfectant and old water. I boarded the same subway line during peak hours, morning and evening, because it aligned perfectly with my office schedule. The train arrived at 7:32 a.m. if it was running late, 7:30 a.m. if everything worked the way it was supposed to. I stood in the same car, Third from the front, near the door, on the right side, because that door opened closest to the stairs at my destination. I did not think of this as ritual. I thought of it as efficiency. There were familiar faces. Not people I knew, not people I spoke to, but people whose presence anchored the space. A woman with a cream-colored trench coat who always read paperback novels. A salaryman who stood rigidly near the door, hands clasped around his briefcase, eyes closed as if conserving energy. A man in his 40s who wore tailored suits and polished shoes, hair always neat, posture relaxed but alert. I noticed him because he boarded at my station and exited at the same one. I noticed him because he never pushed, because he always positioned himself so the flow of people moved around him naturally, because he understood the train. I did not know his name. I never asked. Names felt unnecessary in a place where nothing changed. The morning I heard about the stabbings, everything felt slightly out of alignment. I was tying my shoes when the television caught my attention. The anchor's voice was calm, practiced, the kind of voice designed not to alarm. Behind her, a still image showed a blurred station platform and a line of text identifying the subway line I rode every day. 7 victims, she said, all during peak commuter hours, all on the same line. I stood up slowly, my hands resting on the edge of the counter. The report continued, listing stations, times, vague descriptions of the attacks. Witnesses described confusion, sudden movement, screams swallowed by the noise of the train. The suspect had not yet been arrested. Then the anchor added a detail that made my chest tighten. The suspect was believed to be a managing partner at a prominent Tokyo law firm. Well-dressed, well-educated, no prior criminal record. Colleagues described him as quiet, polite, professional, ordinary. I turned off the television and stood in my kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. My reflection in the darkened screen looked smaller than usual, as if the room had grown around me. On the walk to the station, I found myself studying everyone I passed. Hands, bags, faces. I felt foolish doing it, but the awareness clung to me, sharp and uncomfortable. The platform was crowded, as always. The train arrived, doors sliding open with the same familiar chime. People surged forward, filling the car in practiced silence. I stepped inside and froze. The man in the tailored suit was there, standing near the door, exactly where I always saw him. He glanced at me briefly, his expression neutral, then looked away. Relief washed over me so quickly it startled me. I did not realize how tense I had been until that moment. Something about his presence made the news story feel distant, unreal, like a warning meant for someone else. He was familiar, predictable, safe. The doors closed. The train lurched forward. Without fully deciding to do it, I shifted closer to him, close enough that our sleeves brushed when the train swayed. He noticed and stepped slightly to the side, creating space without appearing annoyed. "I hope you don't mind," I said quietly. My voice sounded smaller than I intended. He looked at me, really looked this time, and smiled faintly. "Not at all," he said. His voice was calm, measured. "It's crowded today." It was not more crowded than usual, but I nodded anyway. I felt foolish for needing the reassurance, and grateful that he offered it without question. Over the next few days, I continued standing beside him. Nothing changed. Nothing happened. If anything, I noticed how adept he was at navigating the space. He shifted his weight before the train turned, braced himself before sudden stops. When the doors opened, he angled his body to shield us from the push of people trying to exit. It felt instinctive, practiced. Once, when the train stalled briefly between stations, I felt a flicker of panic rise in my chest. The lights dimmed slightly, and murmurs rippled through the car. He did not react. He checked his watch, adjusted his grip on the overhead strap, and waited. The train resumed its movement less than a minute later. I told myself that my fear was an overreaction, that I was letting the news distort my perception. The murders had happened, yes, but they were rare, an anomaly. Tokyo was safe, the subway was safe. I stood next to him because it made sense. I began to notice small details. The way he always wore muted colors, the faint scent of cologne, something clean and understated. The fact that he never used his phone during the ride, never seemed distracted. Sometimes, when the train was especially crowded, he would speak quietly, offering practical observations. "This station is usually worse in the evening," he said once, as the doors opened and people flooded in. I nodded, surprised by the familiarity of the comment. "Yes, I try to stand near the door so I can get out quickly. "That's wise," he replied. "People hesitate when they're unsure. That's when accidents happen." I did not think of that conversation again until much later. The man did not appear on a Tuesday morning. I noticed immediately. I stood in my usual place, scanning the car, feeling a small, irrational disappointment. The train felt louder without him, less ordered. I told myself it was coincidence. People took days off. People were sick. That evening, he was not there either. When I returned home, I turned on the television without fully understanding why. The news anchor's voice filled the room. The murders had stopped. An arrest had been made. The suspect was shown in a still image, face partially obscured, but I recognized him instantly. The tailored suit, the posture, the faint, polite smile. I sat down on the floor. They listed the details with careful restraint. Managing partner. No prior record. Familiar with the subway system. Attacks timed to crowd surges and blind spots between cars. I thought of the way he shielded me from the push of people, the way he understood the rhythm of the train. The report ended. The screen went dark. I rode the subway the next morning. I stood in the same car, near the same door. The space beside me remained empty. The train arrived. The doors closed. Life continued with cruel efficiency. No one on the platform looked different. No one screamed. No alarm sounded. I realized then that nothing I had done had protected me. I had not sensed danger. I had not been perceptive or cautious or brave. I had simply chosen the right place to stand by accident. The man I trusted was not hiding. He was not lurking in shadows or waiting in alleys. He was standing exactly where I chose to feel safe. Every morning and every evening, blending seamlessly into the rhythm of a system that rewarded familiarity. I still ride the same line. I still stand in the same car. But I no longer believe that repetition makes anything safe. Story 2. The Long Way Home. I didn't plan to drink as much as I did. That was the first mistake. The kind you only recognize after you've already made it, and the night has started to tilt at the edges. It wasn't that I got sloppy. I wasn't falling over myself or slurring my words. I was still sharp enough to follow a conversation, still aware enough to keep my badge buried deep in my purse, still sober enough to know when something felt wrong. But alcohol doesn't have to erase your instincts to dull them. It just has to soften the part of you that reacts fast. We were celebrating at a neighborhood bar, one of those places that sits on a quiet residential street outside the city center, lit warm and golden inside, but surrounded by long stretches of shadow once you step back onto the sidewalk. A small promotion for someone on my shift, a retirement announcement for someone else, and a general excuse for everyone to pretend we weren't exhausted all the time. I'm Veronica Smith, NYPD patrol officer. The job makes you familiar with danger in a way that feels almost unfair. You see patterns. You see how things go wrong. You see how quickly the ordinary can become permanent. That night I let myself forget. The bar was crowded, loud, humid with body heat. The music was too bright for the dim lighting, but it didn't matter. We were laughing. We were talking over each other. We were leaning into the brief illusion that we were just people, not walking targets in uniform the moment we clocked in. When it was time to go, I stepped outside into air that felt thin and cold. The street was quiet. Parked cars lined both sides, their windshields reflecting the streetlights like dull eyes. Somewhere down the block, a traffic signal blinked patiently over an empty intersection. I stood on the curb and lifted my hand. The first taxi slowed and pulled over like it had been waiting for me. The driver was large, shoulders hunched forward, his hair unkempt beneath a cap. The interior smelled faintly of stale smoke and something sweet that made my stomach turn. The plastic partition behind the front seats was scratched, cloudy, the kind of barrier that made you feel less protected instead of more. The backseat upholstery was damp in places, like it had been wiped down too quickly. I slid in and shut the door. The lock clicked. I told myself it was automatic. "You heading far?" the driver asked. His voice was loud in the small space. He spoke as if we were already friends. His eyes flicked to me in the rearview mirror, held my gaze too long. "Just home," I said. "Home where?" he asked immediately, like it was a natural follow-up, like it was something he needed to know to do his job. I gave him a cross street, not an address. I watched him punch it into his phone mounted on the dash. He pulled away from the curb. At first, it felt normal. The car moved smoothly through the streets, passing darkened apartment buildings, storefronts with their gates pulled down. The city at night is a different organism than the city in daylight. The same streets, the same signs, but stripped of the crowd that makes everything feel less personal. The driver talked constantly. He asked where I'd been. He asked who I was with. He asked if I had a boyfriend. His tone wasn't flirtatious, exactly. It was prying, persistent, like he was sorting through a list and checking off boxes. I answered with half-truths and vague responses, the way you do when you want to keep things polite while still keeping distance. "You live alone?" he asked, as if we were discussing weather. I didn't answer right away. He chuckled, as though my silence was cute. "It's okay. I'm just making conversation. Night's boring, you know? Gotta talk to stay awake." My hand tightened around the strap of my purse. The leather felt slick against my palm. I watched the route on the map on his phone. He wasn't taking the most direct way, but there are always reasons for that in the city. Traffic, construction, detours that pop up overnight without warning. I'd driven those streets myself on patrol. I'd been rerouted by orange cones and temporary signs enough times to know you couldn't always judge a route by instinct. Still, the streets were getting quieter. The buildings thinned, and the streetlights grew more spaced out. The sidewalks were empty. The storefronts turned into chain-link fences and blank walls. "Where are we going?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. He laughed again. "Relax. Shortcut. Shortcuts are where bad things happen." That's what my partner used to say when we were rookies. You don't take shortcuts. You don't park in dark lots. You don't assume you're safe because you're wearing a uniform. I was not wearing a uniform. I was wearing jeans, a simple blouse, my hair down. I looked like any other woman trying to get home late at night. The only thing that separated me from most passengers was that I recognized the shape of danger even when it was trying to look casual. The driver glanced at me in the mirror again. His smile showed teeth. "You got people waiting up?" he asked. "No," I said, too quickly. He nodded as if that confirmed something for him. The taxi slowed. We were on a side street that felt too narrow, too still. Parked cars sat like abandoned shells along the curb. A line of trash bags leaned against a pole, black plastic shining under the streetlight. I saw no pedestrians, no open businesses, no late-night foot traffic, just quiet. The driver pulled the taxi over. My heart didn't pound. Not yet. My body was too used to holding steady until the moment it couldn't anymore. The fear came in a different way, like a tightening in my throat, like the air had grown thicker. "What's wrong?" I asked. He sighed dramatically. "Engine. Sometimes it acts up. Don't worry, I'll check." He shifted into park. The doors locked. I heard it clearly, a heavy mechanical clunk that made the back seat feel smaller. I stared at the door handle, then at him. "Why did the doors lock?" I asked. He kept his hands on the steering wheel for a moment, as if considering. Then he turned his head slightly, not fully facing me, just enough that I could see the curve of his cheek and the shadow of his grin. "Safety," he said. The dashboard was clean, no warning lights, no blinking indicators. The engine was still running smoothly, a steady hum that did not match his claim. He reached down toward something near his seat. My thoughts sharpened, cutting through the haze. There's a moment in these situations where you understand you are past the point of being polite, past the point of being normal, past the point of waiting to see if you're overreacting. My instincts snapped into place like a weapon being assembled. "Let me out," I said. He didn't move. He didn't unlock the doors. He just sat there, letting the silence stretch. Then he turned fully toward me. His eyes looked dull, heavy-lidded, like he was bored, like he had done this before. His smile lingered too long, and it made my skin crawl. "You're pretty," he said, as if he were offering a compliment. I swallowed. The inside of my mouth tasted metallic. "Unlock the doors," I said again. His smile deepened. He leaned slightly toward the partition, as if he wanted me to see his face more clearly. "Don't be like that. We're just talking." I could hear my own breathing now, controlled, but faster. I looked past him, out the windshield. The street was empty. A single street light flickered above us, casting slow pulses of light across the hood. The glow made everything feel unreal, like a scene staged for someone else. My phone was in my pocket. I could call, but calling wouldn't help if the doors stayed locked and no one heard. And even if someone did come, how long would that take? The driver's hand moved again, down toward the side of his seat. My mind pulled up 100 scenarios. Traffic stops, domestic calls, late night disturbances. Every time I'd seen someone hesitate, hoping the situation would de-escalate on its own. Every time I'd watched that hesitation turn into regret, I forced my voice to steady. "My boyfriend is tracking this ride," I said. "He has my location. If I don't arrive in 5 minutes, he calls 911. It wasn't true. But the lie didn't have to be perfect. It just had to create uncertainty. The driver's eyes narrowed. He didn't say anything. I pressed on, leaning into the lie as if it had always been real. "He's waiting outside. He's a detective." Still not true, but close enough to taste. The driver's smile flickered, just a crack in the expression, a recalculation. I added quietly, "Unlock the doors." He stared at me for a long moment. The hum of the engine filled the space. Somewhere distant, a siren wailed and faded, like the city reminding me it was still alive. Then, slowly, he turned back to the wheel and tapped something near his console. The locks released. I didn't wait. I shoved the door open and stepped out, my feet hitting the pavement hard enough to sting. Cold air slapped my face. I shut the door behind me and backed away immediately, not turning my back, not giving him the space to lunge. The taxi idled for a beat, as if he couldn't decide what to do next. Then, without a word, he pulled away from the curb and drove off. His taillights disappeared into the darkness like a pair of red eyes closing. I stood there for a second, my legs trembling so faintly I almost didn't feel it. The adrenaline was moving through me now, sharp and clean, making the world too bright. I started walking. I walked fast, keeping to the edge of the sidewalk, scanning intersections, looking for lit streets, open stores, anything that meant other people were nearby. The quiet street felt like it was holding its breath behind me. I didn't look back until I reached a main road. The road was brighter, wider. Cars passed, their headlights sweeping over me. A convenience store glowed on the corner, fluorescent light spilling onto the sidewalk. I stepped into that light and forced myself to breathe. I was reaching for my phone when a car slowed beside me. My body tensed instantly. My hand hovered near my pocket. The window rolled down. "Veronica?" My head snapped toward the voice. Calvin Bond leaned out from the passenger seat. His cheeks were flushed, eyes tired, but his expression was immediate concern. "Calvin," I said, my voice cracking on his name. He frowned. "What are you doing out here?" I looked at the driver, a middle-aged man with both hands on the wheel, watching quietly. The Uber app glowed on his phone mount. I had a problem with a taxi. I managed. Calvin's jaw tightened. "Get in." The Uber driver glanced at Calvin in the rearview mirror. "It's okay?" he asked, cautious but not refusing. "It's okay," Calvin said firmly. "She's coming with us." I slid into the back seat, and as soon as the door shut, the lock clicked. But this time, it was the expected kind. The kind that didn't feel like a trap. My hands were shaking. I stared at them in my lap, willing them to still. The Uber pulled back into traffic, moving through the city like a lifeline. Calvin didn't press for details. He didn't ask me to explain. He just sat there, present, and that presence was enough to keep my breathing from turning into something worse. When I got home, I stood in my doorway for a long time before I stepped inside. I slept with my phone on my chest. For days after, I told myself I'd been lucky, that I'd reacted fast enough, that my training had mattered. Then, the following week, I was on duty when I saw him, the taxi driver. He was being escorted into my station in handcuffs. His cap was gone. His shoulders seemed smaller without the steering wheel in front of him. A detective walked beside him, speaking in a low voice. I froze mid-step. One of the officers noticed my expression. "You recognize him?" I swallowed hard. "Yes." "Good," he said. "He got picked up last night." Another passenger reported him. Intoxicated woman. She didn't get out when she should have. The words hit me like a shove. She didn't get out in time. I stared at the driver as he passed, his eyes forward, his face blank. He didn't look at me. If he recognized me, he didn't show it. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. I hadn't survived because the system had protected me. The system had only reacted after someone else got hurt. I had survived because timing intervened, because I lied convincingly enough to create doubt, because I stepped out at the exact moment he let me, because Calvin happened to pass by when he did. If the street had been emptier, if Calvin's Uber hadn't been there, if my lie had sounded less believable, the story would have ended differently. The danger wasn't hidden. It wasn't misunderstood. It wasn't extraordinary. It was already working, waiting for someone who didn't get out in time. Story 3. The last stop before morning. I don't remember falling asleep that night, but I remember the moment my eyes opened. That's how it always is when I stay too late at Lamar's place. My body shuts down in pieces, one system at a time, until my brain snaps back online all at once. Already stressed about how late it is. The room smelled like energy drinks and warm electronics, cables coiled across the floor like veins. My 7-string guitar rested against the wall beside the desk, its case unzipped just enough to show the matte finish of the body. We had been working on demos for hours. Not casually, not background noise production, but the kind of focused session where time compresses and nothing exists except tone, rhythm, and the feeling that you're close to something important. Lamar had been locked in behind the kit, chasing a groove that felt alive. I'd been hunched over my guitar, fingers sore, throat raw from layering vocal takes that never quite felt right. Invent Animate was playing quietly through the monitors, not for reference so much as atmosphere. Thornhill tracks queued up behind it. We were both trying to capture that balance between weight and space, aggression and restraint. Music that felt like pressure rather than noise. When I checked my phone, it was past midnight. "I gotta bounce," I said, my voice hoarse. "Last train's not waiting for us." Lamar nodded without looking up. "Send me the stems tomorrow. That chorus is almost there." "Almost," I said, smiling despite myself. I zipped up my guitar case and slung it over my shoulder. It was a nice guitar, too nice for the neighborhoods I was about to cross. Top of the line, extended range, something I'd saved for and babied since the day I bought it. The kind of thing people noticed, whether you wanted them to or not. The streets outside were quiet, the air heavy with summer humidity that clung to my skin. My ears rang faintly from hours of volume. I walked fast, replaying riffs in my head, tapping rhythms against my thigh, already thinking about changes I wanted to make to the bridge. The subway station yawned open beneath me, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The platform was mostly empty, just a few scattered figures leaning against pillars or sitting on benches, phones glowing in the dark. The train arrived with a metallic scream, doors sliding open like an invitation I didn't fully trust. I stepped into the car and chose a spot near the middle, close to the door between cars. The guitar case rested against my leg. Familiar weight, familiar shape. I wrapped my fingers around the handle automatically. The train lurched forward. That's when I noticed them. 2 guys, maybe late teens or early 20s, sitting a little too close together, eyes tracking me in a way that felt coordinated. Not staring openly, not aggressive yet, just watching. One nudged the other, murmured something I couldn't hear. They both smiled. I told myself I was being paranoid. Late night trains do that to you. Everything feels louder, sharper. Every glance feels loaded. I shifted my weight, adjusted the strap of my case, stared at the reflection in the window instead of at them. At the next stop, they moved. One stood and took a spot near the aisle, blocking the path just enough to make it awkward. The other drifted closer, leaning against a pole within arm's reach of me. Too close for comfort, but not close enough to justify calling it out. "Nice case," the one near me said casually. "That a guitar?" I nodded. "Yeah." "What kind?" the other asked, still smiling. "Just a guitar," I said. He laughed. "That's not just a guitar. That's a 7-string, right? I can tell by the length." My stomach tightened. "Yeah, bet it's expensive." The train rocked as it picked up speed. The lights flickered briefly, plunging the car into a momentary dimness that made my pulse jump. "I gotta get off soon," I said, though I wasn't sure why I said it. I didn't owe them anything. "Same," the first one said, stepping closer. "We'll help you carry it." They laughed, the sound light, almost playful. Anyone watching might have thought they were just messing around. Friends teasing a stranger. I glanced around the car. There were people there, but no one was looking at us. Heads down, eyes on screens. Late night etiquette. Don't get involved. The train slowed, then sped up again, skipping a station due to maintenance. The announcement crackled overhead, words distorted and easy to miss. The guys exchanged a look. The one blocking the aisle nodded toward the door between cars. "Let's get some space, man. It's cramped in here." Before I could respond, his hand pressed against my shoulder, guiding me forward. Not rough, not violent yet. Just enough pressure to steer me where he wanted me. I stumbled into the narrow space between cars, metal walls vibrating with the motion of the train. The door slid shut behind us with a final click that sounded much louder than it should have. The air felt different there. Hotter, louder. The smell of oil and metal seeped into my lungs. The second guy stepped in front of me, blocking the exit back into the car. His smile was gone now. "Open the case," he said. "No," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. The first guy shoved me lightly, testing. I hit the wall behind me, the impact knocking the breath from my chest. "Come on," he said. "Don't make it weird." They circled me, movements loose, confident. This wasn't their first time. I could tell by the way they watched my hands, my shoulders, waiting for the moment I'd freeze. My heart hammered so hard it drowned out the noise of the train. "Give us the guitar," the second guy said. "We don't want to hurt you." I laughed once, sharp and involuntary. "That's funny." The first guy's expression hardened. He reached into his jacket and pulled something out. He didn't brandish it, didn't wave it around. He just let me see enough of the handle, the dull gleam of metal. The message was clear. "No one's coming," he said quietly, "and this train's not slowing down for a while." I thought about Lamar, still awake, probably replaying drum fills in his head. I thought about the demos on my hard drive. I thought about how stupid it would be to get hurt over a piece of wood and metal. Then the guy with the weapon took a step closer. Something snapped. I swung the guitar case up, hard, aiming for his arm. The impact jolted through my shoulder, pain flaring as the case connected with bone. He shouted, stumbling back. The other guy lunged for me. I shoved him with everything I had, using the momentum of the moving train to throw him off balance. He crashed into the door, hands scrabbling for purchase. I didn't think. I moved. I barreled past him, slamming my shoulder into the door, back into the car. It didn't open. Panic flared, white hot. The first guy recovered fast. He grabbed the strap of my case, yanking hard. The fabric cut into my shoulder, sending a sharp line of pain down my arm. I twisted, letting the strap slip free. The case dropped to the floor with a heavy thud. For a split second, I considered leaving it. I kicked it instead, hard, sending it sliding into his legs. He cursed, stumbled. The door slid open as the train hit the next station, the sudden deceleration throwing all of us off balance. Light flooded the space. Voices, movement, chaos. I grabbed the case and ran. I pushed through the crowd pouring in, shoving past bodies, ignoring shouts of protest. My lungs burned. My legs felt disconnected from the rest of me, moving on pure instinct. I sprinted up the stairs 2 at a time, the guitar case banging against my leg, every impact sending a spike of pain through my ribs. I didn't stop until I was outside, the night air cool against my sweat-soaked skin. I leaned against a wall and slid down until I was sitting on the concrete, hands shaking uncontrollably. My knuckles were scraped and bleeding. My shoulder throbbed. My throat felt tight, like I might throw up or scream, or both. I checked the case with clumsy fingers. The guitar inside was intact. A small miracle. I laughed again, hysterical this time, then pressed my forehead against the cool metal of the case and breathed until the world stopped spinning. I made it home eventually. I don't remember the rest of the ride. I don't remember unlocking my door. What I remember is sitting on my bed, guitar in my lap, fingers hovering over the strings. They wouldn't stop shaking. I tried to play, I really did. I wanted to prove something to myself, that I could go back to normal, that the music was still there, waiting. But my hands refused to cooperate. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the space between the cars, felt the press of bodies, heard the casual certainty in that guy's voice when he said no one was coming. Violence doesn't announce itself. It doesn't give you a soundtrack or a warning. It slides in quietly, disguised as conversation, as curiosity, as coincidence. It tests you, probes for hesitation, and when it finds it, it moves. The train didn't slow. It never does. And even now, when I carry that guitar through the city, I feel eyes on me that may or may not be real. I grip the handle tighter. I stand closer to doors. I plan exits without realizing I'm doing it. I still make music, but every note carries the memory of how fast everything can change, and how close I came to losing more than a guitar on the last stop before morning. Story 4. Exact change only. I know the sound of that bus better than I know my own living room. The hydraulic sigh when the doors open, the uneven rattle of the floor panels near the back, The way the engine growls when it pulls away from certain stops, like it's tired of doing this route too. I've ridden it 5 nights a week for almost 4 years. Always after my shift ends, always with the same dull ache in my feet and the same fog behind my eyes. My name is Marissa Cole. I am a housekeeping supervisor at a hospital downtown. It's not glamorous work, but it's honest, and it pays the bills. I oversee overnight cleaning crews, make sure rooms are turned over correctly, make sure no one cuts corners when it comes to sanitation. You learn to notice details when people's lives depend on what you miss. When my shift ends at 11:43 p.m., I clock out, change out of my scrubs, and walk 3 blocks to the bus stop under a streetlight that flickers like it's thinking about quitting. The bus usually comes at 11:57. If it's late, it's never more than 5 minutes. I stand in the same spot on the sidewalk right where the curb dips slightly. When the bus pulls up, I board through the front door, nod at the driver, and drop my pass into the reader even though I know it works. Then I walk to the back and sit in the same seat, third from the rear on the left side, the one with the torn vinyl and the faint smell of cleaning solution that never quite goes away. That seat faces the aisle. I like that. I like being able to see who gets on and who doesn't. Routine makes things feel manageable. It turns long nights into something you can survive one step at a time. The night it happened started like every other night. I boarded the bus, nodded at the driver, and took my seat. There were a few other passengers scattered throughout, a guy in a hoodie asleep near the front, a woman with earbuds in scrolling on her phone, an older man staring out the window like he was watching something only he could see. The bus pulled away from the curb and settled into its familiar rhythm. At the 3rd stop, he got on. He didn't pay. He argued instead. "I'm not paying for 2 stops," he said loudly, standing just inside the door. "That's ridiculous." The driver didn't raise his voice. He didn't even look surprised. "Sir, you need to pay or take a seat." I said, "I'm not paying," the man snapped. "You gonna throw me off?" The driver glanced at the clock mounted near the windshield, then straight ahead again. "Take a seat." That was it. No escalation, no confrontation, policy in action. The bus lurched forward, and the man laughed under his breath as he moved down the aisle. I felt a flicker of irritation, but nothing more. People tried to ride free all the time. Usually, they sat up front. Usually, they got off after a stop or 2. He walked past empty seats, past the middle of the bus, and sat directly behind me. I noticed the weight shift immediately. The seat cushion dipped as he settled in. I smelled him, something sour and stale, layered over cheap cologne. I straightened slightly, instinctively creating space that didn't really exist. The bus rolled on. For a while, nothing happened. I stared out the window, watching the city slide by in fragments. Dark storefronts, shuttered restaurants, the occasional neon sign buzzing quietly into the night. My feet throbbed inside my shoes. I flexed my toes, trying to wake them up enough to make the walk home bearable. Then he spoke. "You work at the hospital," he said. His voice was soft, too soft, not aggressive, not loud enough for anyone else to notice. I didn't respond. "I see you every night," he continued. "Same uniform, same stop." I swallowed and kept my eyes forward. "Housekeeping," he said. "Supervisor, right? You walk around checking other people's work." My fingers tightened around the strap of my bag. He leaned forward slightly. I felt his presence more than I heard him, a pressure at my back. "You look tired tonight," he said. "More than usual." I told myself not to react. Not yet. Sometimes people talk. Sometimes they say things they shouldn't. The safest thing to do is ignore it. Let it pass. The bus hit a familiar stoplight, the one that always took too long to change. Red light bathing the interior in a dull glow. "How long you been riding this route?" he asked. I counted my breaths. "One of these days," he went on, "you're gonna miss your stop. You always look like you're thinking about something else." The light turned green. The bus moved. I pressed the stop cord early. The chime sounded bright and cheerful, completely out of place. The bus did not slow. I leaned forward, heart beginning to thud harder. I caught the driver's eye in the mirror. He shook his head once, barely noticeable. The bus was ahead of schedule. Protocol. After midnight, only designated stops. My mouth went dry. The man behind me chuckled quietly. "Not yet," he said. I shifted in my seat, angling my body toward the aisle. The bus felt smaller now, every sound amplified. The hum of the engine, the squeak of the suspension, The soft murmur of someone's music leaking from headphones. "Next one," I said, more to myself than to anyone else. The man leaned closer. "You always get off 3 stops too late when you're scared," he whispered. The words slid under my skin like a blade. I stood up. My legs felt unsteady, but I forced them to move. I stepped into the aisle and started walking toward the front of the bus. I didn't look back, but I felt him stand up behind me, not rushing, not grabbing, just following. I stopped near the front seats, close enough to the driver that I could hear his breathing. I waited for the next stop. The bus slowed. The doors opened. I stepped off. The man did not. The doors closed. The bus pulled away. I stood on the sidewalk under a streetlight that buzzed faintly, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. I watched the bus disappear down the street, its taillights shrinking into the darkness. For a moment, I felt foolish, embarrassed, like I'd overreacted. Then I realized my hands were shaking. I waited for the next bus. It came 20 minutes later. I boarded, sat near the front this time, and kept my eyes on the door the entire ride. No one sat behind me. No one spoke to me. Nothing happened. I got home, locked my door, and leaned against it until my breathing slowed. The next night, I took the same bus. Routine is stubborn like that. At the 3rd stop, he got on again. Didn't pay. Argued briefly. Sat directly behind me. This time, I stood immediately. I moved toward the front, planting myself beside the driver. He glanced at me, his expression unreadable, and nodded once. The man stayed where he was. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. The rest of the ride passed in silence, thick enough to choke on. When I got off at my stop, I didn't look back. I don't know if he ever got off the bus. I don't know if he followed me on another night, or if he moved on to someone who didn't recognize the pattern fast enough. What I do know is that the system worked exactly as designed. The driver avoided conflict. The bus stayed on schedule. The rules were followed. And I learned something I wish I didn't have to know. Sometimes the most dangerous thing in the world is a system that does its job perfectly, even when it shouldn't. Story 5. I stayed on one stop too long. I always told myself the red line was different. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, always moving, always lit. It felt like a promise the city made to itself, that no matter how late you worked or how tired you were, there would still be a way home. I built my routine around that idea. I worked late at a medical billing office, the kind of place that never quite sleeps because insurance never does. By the time I clocked out, the building was quiet and the streets outside were thin with people. My name is Hannah. I'm in my early 30s. I live alone. I ride the red line because it's always running. That night, I boarded just after midnight. The platform smelled like hot metal and old rain. A train was already waiting. Doors open, fluorescent lights humming overhead. Inside, the car was half full. Not crowded enough to disappear into, not empty enough to feel alone. A few people sat with their heads down, earbuds in, faces lit by their phones. A man slept slumped against the window, mouth open. Someone stood near the door, scrolling aimlessly, thumb moving without intention. I chose a seat near the middle of the car, back against the wall, my bag resting on my lap. The train lurched forward with a familiar jolt, steel on steel echoing through the tunnel. I exhaled. This was the part of the day where I stopped thinking, where my body took over and carried me through a sequence it knew by heart. 5 stops, transfer, 3 more, walk home. At the next station, the doors opened and a man stepped on. I noticed him because he looked at me. Not a stare, not lingering, just a glance that landed and stayed a beat longer than it needed to. He wore a dark jacket and jeans, nothing distinctive, nothing that would stand out in a crowd. He sat across from me, knees angled slightly toward mine. I looked away. Nothing about him was overt, nothing that would justify alarm. My chest stayed calm, my breathing steady. I told myself not to be dramatic. The train moved on. At my stop, I stood. He stood too. We stepped off onto the platform together, walking in the same direction without acknowledging each other. I told myself it was coincidence. The red line only has so many exits. People funnel toward the same stairs. I climbed the steps, felt the night air hit my face, and paused to adjust my bag. When I glanced back, he was still behind me, unhurried, hands in his pockets. He turned left. I turned right. Relief loosened something in my shoulders. The next night, it happened again. Same time, same car, same quiet hum of late-night commuters pretending not to exist. He boarded 2 stops before mine this time. Sat across from me again, legs angled in the same way. When I got off, he got off. When I slowed, he slowed. When I stopped to tie my shoe near the top of the stairs, he stopped too, pretending to check his phone. I didn't confront him. I didn't speed up. I told myself patterns appear when you're looking for them. On the 3rd night, I stayed on the train. The doors opened at my stop. I watched my reflection in the window instead of moving. My face looked pale under the harsh lighting, eyes too bright. The doors slid closed, sealing me inside. The man stayed seated. The train pulled away, and my heart began to beat harder, faster, like it was trying to warn me about something my mind hadn't accepted yet. At the next stop, no one got off. At the stop after that, a few people boarded, filling the car with brief movement and noise. I stood and shifted toward the door, planning to get off and walk back 1 station. The man stood too. He didn't rush. He didn't reach for me. He simply mirrored my movement, keeping a comfortable distance that looked normal to anyone watching. I sat back down. So did he. Now I knew. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't my imagination. The knowledge settled in my stomach, heavy and cold. I felt stupid for not trusting my instincts sooner, for trying to reason my way out of fear instead of listening to it. Between stations, I walked to the end of the car and pressed the emergency intercom. A calm voice answered almost immediately. "This is the operator. What seems to be the problem?" I kept my voice low. "There's a man following me. He's been getting off at the same stops." A pause. Not long, but long enough to feel deliberate. "Has he threatened you?" the operator asked. "No," I said. "Has he touched you?" "No." Another pause. "If there's no immediate threat, remain on the train and exit at a staffed platform. The next one is 6 stops ahead." 6 stops. The train rocked forward, metal screaming faintly against the rails. I thanked the operator and let go of the button, my hand trembling slightly. I walked back toward my seat. The man watched me the entire time, his expression neutral, his eyes steady. He didn't smile. He didn't look away. I sat. He sat. The minutes stretched. Each stop felt farther apart than the last. The car slowly emptied, passengers peeling off until only a handful remained. No one looked at me. No one noticed the way my foot tapped against the floor, the way my hands clenched and unclenched in my lap. At the 4th stop past mine, I stood again and moved toward the door between cars. He stood too. Still no rush. Still no aggression, just proximity. I slipped into the next car, heart pounding. The doors slid shut behind me. The space felt different, smaller somehow. 2 people sat near the far end, both absorbed in their phones. I took a seat near the door, forcing myself to look calm. The doors opened at the next station. He stepped through them first. That was new. He exited onto the platform and stopped, turning just enough that I could see his profile through the glass. The doors stayed open, the warning chime beginning its steady, insistent rhythm. For a moment, my body didn't respond. My brain scrambled for logic, for instructions, for some rule that would tell me what to do next. If I stayed on the train, he could get back on at the next stop. If I got off, I would be alone with him on a mostly empty platform. The operator's voice echoed in my head. Remain on the train. Exit at a staffed platform. The doors began to close. I stood, moving on instinct now, stepping forward until I was halfway between the car and the platform. 1 foot hovered over the gap, the other planted on the rubber floor of the train. The platform lights flickered, washing his face in pale yellow and shadow. He didn't smile. He didn't gesture. He just waited, patient, like he knew time was on his side. The doors continued to slide together, and I realized that there are moments where escape becomes a choice, and every choice carries risk, and no one can make it for you. The doors kept closing. The sound filled my ears. Everything else went quiet. You have reached the end of these routes, the point where the doors stop opening, where the announcements fall silent, and where the system assumes the ride is complete. The stories you heard tonight do not end with alarms. They rarely do. Some end with escape. Some end with survival by chance. And some end in moments that never fully resolve, because resolution is not always part of the system's design. Mass transit is built to move forward. Trains do not linger on what almost happened. Buses do not record what was felt instead of said. Platforms do not remember who hesitated when the doors were already closing. If any of these stories stayed with you, if something felt uncomfortably familiar, a car you always stand in, a stop you nearly missed, a stranger who felt safe only because they were always there, or a moment when policy mattered more than instinct, do not dismiss that reaction. Danger on mass transit does not usually announce itself. It blends into routine. It borrows the shape of coincidence. It waits inside spaces designed for anonymity, where millions pass through each other's lives without ever truly seeing one another. In the real world, most transit rides end without incident. Most people arrive home safely, and most systems function exactly as intended. But when something goes wrong, it often does so quietly, in the space between stops, in the delay before a response, in the moment when everyone assumes someone else will notice. If you ever feel unsafe while traveling, trust that feeling. Move closer to light. Change cars. Alert staff when you can. Your instinct does not need permission to exist. Systems are designed to maintain order. They are not designed to protect individuals automatically. They work best when someone chooses to engage with them. If these stories unsettled you, if one moment lingered longer than the rest, you are not alone. That feeling is not paranoia, it is awareness. And awareness is often the only thing that interrupts routine before routine turns into regret. If you want to continue exploring stories like these, stories rooted in real systems, real decisions, and real consequences, consider subscribing to Entity Shadows. Here, the horror does not come from monsters or myths, but from what happens when ordinary people move through ordinary systems that never slow down. If you choose to share this video, do so not because it frightened you, but because it reminded you how easily a moment can tip without anyone pulling the emergency brake. And if you carry a story of your own, a ride that felt wrong, a moment you never fully explained, or a routine that almost failed to complete, you are welcome to share it. Submission details are available in the channel bio, and your experience may help someone else recognize a pattern before it repeats or become a part of a future Entity Shadows episode. Thank you for listening, for staying present, for paying attention long enough to notice when the system keeps moving, even when it shouldn't. And as you return to your own commute, stand behind the line, watch the doors, trust the pause that tells you something is off. Because the most unsettling part of mass transit is not where it takes you. It is what it carries past you every day without stopping. And remember, the dark awaits.